In the next videos, we're going to discuss the rotate, scale, and offset tools and how they can be useful to our drawing process. First, we'll begin by discussing the rotate tool and how the rotate tool works. It is this icon here. It's found in the Tools menu. It is by default set up with the Q key for mapping for keyboard shortcut. I have assigned mine to the W key. I use Q for my line, I use W for my rotate, I use W for my move, I use E for my rotate, and R for my scale, simply because that is pretty standard throughout other modeling programs where W, E, and R are move, scale, and rotate. So I just wanted things to be uniform because I use quite a few other programs besides SketchUp. But automatically yours should be mapped to the Q key. You can put it wherever you want, whatever's best. If you want to do what I do and follow my keyboard shortcuts, I map mine to the E key for the rotate tool. Let's pull the rotate tool up, and one thing you see right away, it is similar to the move tool in that it will select if nothing is selected. It will select what's under the cursor, allow you to do some pretty rapid rotating without having to deselect and switch tools. The rotate tool in this viewpoint, where we are in the parallel projection, let's switch this style to engineering. It gets rid of some of the points there on the lines. We're in the top view in our plan view preset here. We're only going to get the rotate tool working in the blue axis, which means that it is flat on the ground. And as we are talking just about drawing at this point, I'm going to just go over how the rotate tool works within this environment. When you click with the rotate tool, you first set your pivot point as your rotation point on that object. So if I wanted to rotate, let's say, this component here that we named pillar in one of our previous videos, I would grab the pivot point first, and my second point is going to be where I'm rotating around that pivot, and that's primarily for snapping purposes. If I wanted to have my center point here and rotate this around and snap to this line, I could do that. Hitting escape at any time with any of these tools will cancel out that tool. I'm going to hit the escape key. If I would, let's say, move this, again, this is in 3D, so it's going to be a little bit different. Let me switch back to parallel projection in my top view and just kind of show you here. If I would, for instance, move this over, and actually let me grab one of these components we made here, and if I would want to align this pillar with the edge of this patio space, the way that I would go about doing that is finding this midpoint here and selecting my component and using the move tool, moving the midpoint to where I wanted it on this line. And then from there I can bring up my rotate tool. I can click on that midpoint. I can click up to this midpoint and pull it over until it touches the line. So now I'm pretty much center point or midpoint to midpoint through the curve on this patio. So it's a pretty simple tool, especially when we are in 2D. In 3D it gets a little bit trickier, just because there's a lot more going on with the z-axis thrown into the equation. But with this one, just remember that where you click is what will rotate. as your pivot point initially. So even if, let's say I had let me draw this with the 2D tool so I can get my center point. If I had a circle here with a center point and I wanted to rotate this around this circle, well then I would bring up the rotate tool and I would first click on the center point, and then I would come up and click on the component, remembering that the center point is going to be my rotation point, and I can rotate that component around this shape. If I had a center point here, I could rotate this around this shape. I could, for instance, if I offset this circle, I could draw a single line here, and I could select that line, use the rotate tool, and rotate that line around here, or I could press the control key and the rotate tool, similarly to the move tool, becomes an array copy tool. So you can make rotated arrays. I can do that with something like this line and find my midpoint, come up and grab the back edge of this line, tap the control key, and it's going to convert this into a copy now. And I moved a copy of that over to this point. If I would then type in my keyboard entry, let's say 15x for 15 more, it's going to take me that far around. I see I need 2 more. If I hit 17x, that would complete a complete rotation of this edge rotated around this circle at a specific distance that matches the segments. It's a good way if you are doing representing, let's say, a wall here on part of this patio that we drew out, and you had what was supposed to represent, let me get rid of this, it's outside the group, let me move that over. So now what I want to do is find my center point. I'm going to explode this to do that because I have a plugin that I use that I showed you previously. Chris Fulmer Tools, Arc Center Point Finder, and now what I can do is take this edge, recycle it, grab the rotate tool, click this end, tap control to bring up copy, and now I'm rotating this edge along this curve. So I can do that at a spacing that looks comparable to a cap, and I can type, when I type 10x, I can type 11x because I see I need one more, and that would rotate around to make my caps. So that's a pretty easy way. I wouldn't recommend doing that because in 2D we're going to eventually hopefully get this job and start to model this, and if the client wants to see a visualization of what this looks like, we're going to start pulling this up into 3D. If you would rotate something around, if I bring up the rotate tool and start rotating this thing around, I am now creating separate faces. So if I do get to the point that I want to extrude these, then I'm going to run into a little bit of a headache because I'm going to have to delete all these and then recreate them. One thing you can do is utilize something we've learned previously. I could rotate that there, and I could turn that into a component by using the G key for my shortcut. I could set this component axis towards the bottom here, and I could name this component joint, hit create. The one thing I didn't do was actually do that again. I forgot to click Replace Selection with Component. If it's a single edge, that will typically be off, so I got to turn that on. Rename this again, Joint, Enter. Component already exists. Yes, I want to replace that definition, and now I have what is my joint here to represent my cap on this wall. So if I continued now and I said this was it's a small cap here, but I did 20x. I see I need one more. I'm going to do 21x. Now all of these caps under here are isolated, as we talked about, from this geometry underneath. The beautiful part about that is I can, now that I have all that isolated, with one simple click, I can still select all of these faces. There is an edge under here that I'm going to move a copy of this to this corner temporarily. I'm going to delete that edge. I'm going to grab this again, and I'm going to move. I think I moved the edge, perhaps, instead of the component that was there. Control Y to redo. I'm going to delete that. Oh, there it was. Now when I click on there, I can instantly select all of this face at once and see my square footage of that cap. I can double click that, deselect the middle by holding Shift, and see that my total linear footage is 44 feet. If I cut that in half, I get the linear footage of my caps for ordering. We're going to go into that in depth here in a little bit, but I just wanted to, as we're talking about the rotate tool, tell you the benefit of grouping something like this before you would rotate it. You can also utilize our new Selection Toys plugin and go select instances and select all of those, and you could hide them, put them on their own layer, get them out of the way temporarily. When we do get into core modeling and building all of the 3D features in the next session, we're going to get a lot more into this. So I just wanted to show temporarily some of the things you could do with the rotate tool while you're in your drawing mode. So there's a multitude of uses. I should mention, while we're talking about the rotate tool, something that I didn't mention before when we were talking about the move tool, and that is that the move tool is also, among the many other hats that it wears, it's also a rotate tool. If I would bring up my move tool on any component or group, I also get these little plus signs, and those will bring up a secondary rotate option. It allows you to rotate on the central pivot, the center of this bounding box, and I'm going to just rotate that right in place. It's an option that I would recommend when you want to just rotate on a central pivot as opposed to establishing a new pivot point. These, for instance, if I wanted to use the rotate tool and move this specifically on a pivot, I would do that with the rotate tool. If I just wanted to spin this around, I would do that with the move tool and bring up these hash marks. With the move tool, you can type your distance. If I wanted to rotate that 45 degrees, I could do that. If I wanted to rotate it back minus 45, I could do that. I could bring that back to 90. So just good to know. Just a quick example, if I wanted to rotate this block to line up with this block, I would move that corner to there. I would grab this corner, pull up, click on this corner, and bring it down and attach it. Do the same for this one. Grab here, grab this, click it, and attach it. Do the same for this one. Grab here, click, up, attach that. So that's pretty simple. as far as that goes, just know the difference between the move rotate and the rotate tool rotate, and some of the uses that we can have for that within our drawing space. In the next video, we're going to talk a little bit about the scale tool. I'll see you then.